In the stillness of the night, as the world drifts into sleep, only a few find true peace. Most close their eyes, but their bodies are weary and their minds are consumed by internal conflicts, resurrecting past mistakes, hurts, and disappointments. Yet in this quiet and seemingly ordinary moment lies immense power. As Carl Jung asserted, the unconscious shapes reality based on the information received right before sleep. What if there were a simple way to transform this moment into a portal of deep healing? Today we will uncover the meaning and effect of 7 words that, when spoken with sincere intention before sleep, can sow peace in the unconscious, pacify inner battles, and pave the way to a new way of life. Perhaps at the end of this narrative many will feel something long forgotten, a reconnection with their own soul. It is commonly believed that sleep is a kind of stop valve for the body. The body relaxes, the mind rests, and all processes slow down for a few hours. But this is only part of the truth. Many do not realize that even when their eyes are closed and the external world quiets down, their mind continues to work. And not just the mind, but its most mysterious and powerful part, the unconscious. Recall those nights when, despite fatigue, sleep just won't come. Fragments of phrases, past mistakes, and painful situations begin to spin in your head, as if all thoughts come to life with the onset of darkness. This happens because the unconscious never sleeps. It remains vigilant, gathering all unresolved issues, suppressed emotions, hidden fears, unspoken words, and ignored anxieties. The eminent Swiss psychologist Carl Jung argued that the unconscious is like a skilled artist who does not create from emptiness but uses the materials provided to him. If a person fills their mind with burdensome, confusing, or painful experiences, then it is from these that the unconscious will create nocturnal images, turning sleep from a period of restoration into a battlefield. It is no wonder that many people wake up more exhausted than before sleep. The body rested, but the soul remained in a state of internal discord. This is a logical outcome of falling asleep with a mind full of chaos and unresolved contradictions. The truth is that how a person falls asleep has a profound impact on their life as a whole. You can imagine that every day, before sleep, a person plants a seed in the fertile soil of their mind. The unconscious takes care of this seed, watering and nurturing it throughout the night. If it is a seed of fear, the result will be a nightmare. If it is a seed of guilt, the person will wake up with a heavy heart. But if you sow a seed of calm, acceptance, and detachment, something completely different will grow, a sense of lightness, healing, and inner peace. That is why the moment of going to sleep has special significance, dictated not by religious dogmas, but by a conscious approach. Jung called this moment liminal impression, a turning point when consciousness fades and the unconscious takes the reins. What penetrates through this quiet border becomes the foundation on which dreams, emotions, and a person's perception are rebuilt. Imagine it as a sacred ritual. When the body finds peace in the embrace of the bed, the light dims, and the noise of daily hustle gradually subsides, you are faced with a choice: to fill your mind with waves of fear or rays of hope, streams of condemnation or acceptance. This choice is formed through thoughts, feelings, and above all, through the words that you consciously choose to pronounce or hold in your internal dialogue. The vast majority of people make this choice unconsciously, as if in a dream. They fall asleep holding a phone, absorbing streams of negative news, comparing their lives with idealized images on social media, endlessly grinding in their minds the failures and disappointments of the past day. The unconscious accepts all this as raw material for its nightly work. Dreams become nightmarish, sleep becomes restless and intermittent, and the new day begins under the burden of the same fatigue and anxiety. But what if there were a way to change this vicious cycle? A simple yet effective way to send a different message into the depths of your being, a kind of symbolic code that would proclaim to the unconscious, everything is okay, it's time to rest and recover. This code exists, and it consists of just 7 words carrying a powerful charge of positive energy. However, before revealing them, it is important to understand that the unconscious does not perceive language as our logical thinking does. It responds to symbols, images, gestures, imbued with emotions. Therefore, one word spoken with deep feeling and conscious intention has much greater power than 1,000 mechanically repeated phrases. A sincere expression, spoken with faith and conviction, can overcome barriers that a whole arsenal of rational arguments cannot. Instead of seeing sleep as an ordinary end to the day, it should be viewed as the starting point for a process of recovery and renewal. The way a person closes their eyes can reveal a lot about their inner world. The trust placed in the unconscious at this moment determines what one will receive upon awakening. At first glance, this may seem insignificant, even simple, but it is in this simplicity that the power lies, in sincere and conscious actions. Achieving peaceful sleep is entirely possible, and it begins with what a person offers their mind during the last conscious breath before sleep. Let's imagine for a moment that the mind is a garden, a fertile and peaceful place where everything planted inevitably sprouts, be it a beautiful flower or a thorny thistle. This is how the famous psychologist Jung saw the unconscious. It is the psychic soil where the seeds of emotions, thoughts, and words take root and transform into a state of mind, behavior, and perception of the world. During the day, it is easy to get distracted from what exactly a person is sowing in their garden. Tasks, conversations, and external demands lead most people to not notice what thoughts and feelings they are placing in their minds. But at night, when the hustle and bustle subside and silence sets in, everything accumulated comes to the surface, and the soil of the unconscious begins its work. This inner garden does not distinguish between good and evil. It simply cultivates what has been planted with an emotional charge. If a person ends the day fueling anger, regrets, or unresolved disputes, then these feelings will blossom in their inner garden, and this quiet cultivator will soon begin to influence their feelings, behavior, and relationships with others. It turns out that without realizing it, people water their own fears before bed. And the saddest part is that this happens automatically. Often the last thought before sleep is a harsh self-criticism, worry about the future, or a painful memory. And the unconscious, which operates through symbols and feelings, perceives this as a direct instruction for action. Let's imagine what would happen if we changed the last message with which the day ends. What if, instead of cultivating fear, we offered gratitude, instead of desperate resistance, acceptance, instead of striving for control, trust? A profound transformation can begin in this barely noticeable gesture. Jung argued that the unconscious needs living symbols, not just beautiful words. That is why a mantra, spoken with sincere intention, can be more effective than long, mechanical prayers. What matters is not the duration, but the depth of feeling with which a person plants the seed of positive change. By ending the day with a symbolic gesture, a person sends a signal to their unconscious. It's time for rest, recovery, and reflection. This is equivalent to hanging a new sign on the door of the inner garden. Fear no longer grows here, peace reigns here. And the unconscious, like fertile soil, responds to this new command. This is not about magic or forced positive thinking, but about recognizing the power of intention. How a person ends their day largely determines how they will meet the next. The unconscious does not obey the laws of logic. It is formed under the influence of feelings, and when it feels detachment from negativity, trust, and acceptance, it softens, becomes ordered, and comes into balance. One of the most common mistakes is to consider the unconscious something distant, detached from real life. However, it is constantly present, influencing impulses, decisions, and perceptions of the world. It is like a hidden mirror, reflecting everything that a person holds within themselves, often without realizing it. That is why the moment before sleep acquires special significance, as it is a chance to offer the unconscious a new direction, new food for thought, a new form of care. Speaking words before sleep with attention and awareness is like sowing seeds of light in soil that has long been nourished only by shadows, and, as every gardener knows, seeds do not sprout instantly, but thanks to care, repetition, and intention, one day the garden blooms. Inner chaos gives way to a peaceful landscape. Heaviness is replaced by lightness, and the symbolic phrase becomes a new way of life. There is a subtle line between the moment of closing the eyes and the onset of sleep, when the world around seems to dissolve, leaving a person alone with their feelings, thoughts, and experiences of the past day. It is in this fleeting pause that something sacred happens. Consciousness recedes into the background, giving way to the unconscious. Carl Jung, an outstanding thinker, considered this transition sacred. In his view, the ego, the part of our personality responsible for organizing daily life, control, and worry, falls silent as we fall asleep. It's replaced by the self, the center of the soul, the deepest and truest essence of a person. It is with this self that the unconscious enters into a dialogue. However, this dialogue becomes possible only with a certain space. To create it, it's not enough to simply lie in bed and close your eyes. A symbolic gesture of renunciation is needed, a ritual that says to the soul, "Now is your time, I am ready to listen to you." This doesn't necessarily mean prayer or religious rites, but rather creating an internal atmosphere where silence doesn't evoke fear, where presence replaces insistent demands. Carl Jung believed that the deep layers of the unconscious respond not to meaningless phrases but to sincere experiences. Therefore, a concise statement, spoken with deep awareness, can have a greater impact than a lengthy, mechanically uttered speech. This is why the time before going to sleep is particularly important. During this period, rational thinking gradually loosens its grip, giving way to the heart's receptivity to true feelings. In this context, the 7-word ritual acts as a kind of bridge connecting the I, the part of our personality that interacts with the outside world, burdened with obligations, anxieties, and memories, with the self, the silent, wise, and deep essence that resides beyond the daily bustle. By saying a phrase before bed that encompasses acceptance, trust, relinquishment, gratitude, and a good night, a person not only ends the day but also initiates a meeting with their own soul. This meeting can manifest in different ways, in the form of a vivid, memorable dream, in a feeling of peace upon awakening, in an unexpected answer to a long tormenting question, or simply in a more restful sleep after stressful days. It's important to realize that the unconscious listens attentively to our words and responds to them. However, to receive a clear answer, it's necessary to speak the truth, to be honest with oneself. This implies the ability to stop for a moment, take a deep breath, feel your body lying in bed, calm the stream of thoughts, and allow your soul to express itself, not through elaborate phrases, but through pure intention, humility, and presence, as if you were addressing a loved one who has always been there, waiting for your call. The essence of the ritual lies not so much in the words spoken, but in the feelings that accompany them. The 7 words themselves do not possess magical power. They only symbolize a key, an invitation to return to oneself. Repeated day after day, they open an inner door that has long remained locked, allowing us to reconnect with our true essence. It is noteworthy that despite the fact that most people have established morning rituals, such as a cup of coffee, an invigorating shower, or planning upcoming tasks, the end of the day often happens chaotically, as if simply turning off is enough. However, the way we complete tasks and beginnings is of great importance for shaping the future. Turning the end of the day into a conscious ritual of self-discovery and reunification with oneself can radically change a person's inner world. As Carl Jung asserted, the self is an internal compass, a kind of center that points the right direction, even when a person feels lost. But this compass is only able to function in moments when we stop running mindlessly, overanalyzing and trying to control everything around us. It is sleep that provides this necessary pause, the space in which the self can manifest and guide us. By turning going to sleep into a symbolic act, A person takes care not only of physical rest, but also of their inner essence. They are, in effect, saying to themselves, I deserve rest, reunification with myself, and a harmonious end to the day. This gesture, sincerely repeated, becomes a strong bridge between the external personality, manifested in the world, and the inner I. Just 7 words, simple and concise, spoken in haste, may seem insignificant. However, when they are spoken with a peaceful heart, a relaxed body, and a conscious soul, they turn into something more than just a phrase, into a healing gesture, a message to the subconscious, an invitation for the self to manifest and put in order everything that was disrupted during the day. The phrase, I accept, I trust, I relinquish, I am grateful, good night, may seem trite at first glance, but each word in it carries a deep meaning, a certain psychic function, an emotional vector, which, when activated at the right moment, is capable of initiating a quiet process of transformation. It is worth carefully considering what hidden meanings lie behind each of these words. Acceptance is an active stance, far removed from passively resigning oneself to a joyless existence or painful circumstances. Rather, it's a conscious refusal to engage in a fruitless struggle against reality. It's a mindful observation of oneself and the world around, accompanied by the affirmation, I see this, I acknowledge its existence. Acceptance becomes the starting point for overcoming unconscious resistance, which drains vital energy and fuels internal discord. When the subconscious receives a signal of acceptance, it is freed from the need to defend itself and gradually begins to rebuild. Trust is not blind faith, but a conscious rejection of the obsessive need for guarantees. It's an understanding of the limitations of human foresight and an acknowledgement of the naturalness of lacking comprehensive control. The rational mind craves certainty, but the soul is capable of navigating even in impenetrable darkness, uttering, I trust. Trust grants the subconscious freedom, allowing it to let go of the past, loosen the grip of fears. This word teaches even the most rigid aspects of personality flexibility and adaptability, creating the necessary conditions for complete restoration of strength. Renunciation is an act that requires considerable courage, one of the most difficult decisions in a person's life. It's not a capitulation to circumstances, but rather a release from an unbearable burden. By saying, I have done everything possible, now I entrust this to the judgment of time, life, higher powers. A person lets the subconscious know that the struggle is over, and then when the exhausting battle ceases, the healing process begins. Sleep becomes deeper and calmer, dreams become clearer, and the body receives a long-awaited rest. I am grateful is a phrase with incredible power to influence the subconscious. Even in the epicenter of chaos, it can trigger a mechanism of internal transformation. Gratitude is not an acknowledgement of the world's perfection, but an ability to see value, meaning, and light, even in the small things. This simple gesture transforms lack into abundance, pain into experience, and night into refuge. The subconscious, feeling gratitude, responds with tenderness in dreams, thoughts, and in the very awakening. Good night is the most common but often forgotten wish. It's not just a formal phrase, but a deep expression of hope for peace and tranquility. May everything that was find rest, and may the future find free space for development. It's a signal that the day is over, and it's time to snuggle into the bosom of time and soul. Such a symbolic ritual of completing a cycle is of great importance to the subconscious, allowing it to pause and express intention. There is something intangible but palpable. A pause, a space between words and intentions, which in itself becomes an expressive language. This interval testifies to complete involvement and presence. It's necessary to take conscious breaths between words, listen to the sensations in the body, and allow each element of the ritual to touch the inner world. It is this that turns an ordinary set of sounds into a genuine act. Conscious repetition is a key element of the process. One should not hope for an instant miracle after uttering the words once. the subconscious requires consistency and amplification of symbolic meaning. Repeating the ritual for 3 consecutive nights triggers internal changes which in turn transform the surrounding reality. 7 words, spoken simply, calmly, and with an open heart, act like symbolic seeds. Surprisingly, there is no need to understand the mechanism of their action. It's only important to feel, to renounce the superfluous, and to allow the soul to express itself, even in silence. Transformation comes later, but its beginning lies in this modest ritual of 7 words, spoken with a sincere desire for self-knowledge. Before diving into the viewing of this video material, the author makes a sincere request to all viewers who find it useful and interesting to express their support with simple but significant actions. Mark the video with a sign of approval, become part of the community by subscribing to the channel, activate the notification system so as not to miss new publications, and share your thoughts in the comments, writing the phrase, "When the soul is heard before bed, the silence of the night turns into healing." This simple request is dictated by the desire to establish feedback with the audience and make sure that they are interested in the proposed content. Sometimes we tend to underestimate the power of seemingly insignificant actions. Repeating the same phrase before going to bed may seem trivial, especially against the background of those deep inner experiences that many of us face. However, as the sages say, the soul does not respond to loud calls and violent emotions. It awakens thanks to the constancy, delicacy, and symbolism inherent in rituals repeated with a specific intention. The renowned Swiss psychologist Jung believed that genuine personal transformation doesn't arise from significant internal upheavals, but rather through the symbolic repetition of simple yet sincere rituals. The rational mind, seeking quick and tangible results, might doubt this. The modern world dictates that change should be loud, immediate, and noticeable. However, the inner world is structured differently. The soul blossoms gradually in silence and tranquility, following its own rhythm. The unconscious, like fertile soil, responds to only one language, repetition, filled with emotion and meaning. If, before sleep, for 3 consecutive nights, you utter these 7 magic words with complete serenity and focused attention, slowly and thoughtfully, subtle yet perceptible changes will begin to occur deep within your being. Perhaps your body will sink into a state of relaxation more quickly, and your sleep will become deeper and more serene. Maybe the burdensome thoughts that previously weighed you down will gradually lose their power. These changes happen subtly and imperceptibly, but it is this subtlety that indicates the awakening of the soul. Do not expect bright fireworks or grandiose performances. The awakening of the soul is not a spectacular show, but rather a process of reuniting with oneself, which begins the moment you offer your mind a new path. Repeating these 7 words is not merely a mechanical repetition for the sake of repetition, but a conscious presence in the moment, as if each day you drop a drop of light into a dark glass. Sooner or later, this light will fill the entire space, but for this, it is necessary to start with the first, seemingly insignificant drop. As the great psychologist Jung said, the unconscious learns not through logical explanations, but through symbolic repetition. This is why people often know what they should do, but remain trapped in the same, already familiar patterns of behavior. Simple knowledge is not enough. It is necessary to re-educate the unconscious, and this is achieved through simple but deeply felt gestures, repeated with sincere intention. Each night when you say, "I accept, I trust, I renounce, I give thanks, good night," your unconscious records a new way to end the day. It begins to understand that instead of war and struggle, there is peace and harmony, and instead of constant demands, there is renunciation and acceptance. Abandoning oppressive fear and choosing all-encompassing trust opens the door to amazing answers from the subconscious. Sometimes these answers come in the form of dreams, bringing to the surface long-forgotten memories and lost truths. At other times, it manifests as a feeling of serene lightness accompanying awakening, as if a burden of worries has been lifted from the shoulders. And sometimes, trust bestows precious inner silence, not empty and oppressive, but filled with potential and opportunities. This silence becomes that space, cleansed of emotional chaos and confusion, where the true I can finally manifest. In this silence, intuition finds its voice, allowing you to hear the whisper of the soul, guiding you on the right path. And all this becomes possible thanks to a simple decision: to stop for 3 nights and utter the cherished words with sincerity coming from the very heart. The number 3 possesses a powerful symbolic force, being the minimum period of time necessary to initiate profound internal transformations. It is as if, on the first night, a person addresses their soul with the words, "I am here, I am near." On the second night, the soul replies, "I am listening to you, I am ready to listen." And on the third night, it declares, "Now I can act, I have gained strength." Of course, 3 nights are not a panacea for all ills and do not solve all problems, but they serve as the starting point from which a long and fascinating journey to oneself begins. Having started this path once, a person continues it not out of a sense of duty or obligation, but by their own conscious choice. They feel how the practice works, how it changes their life, even if only slightly. The most amazing thing is that this practice does not require titanic efforts, deep technical knowledge, or the creation of an ideal environment. All that is needed is the person themselves, a quiet room, a body ready to rest, and a heart open to listening to oneself. There is no need to offer prayers aloud or profess certain religious beliefs. It is enough to simply be present in the moment, sincerely wanting to return home, inside oneself, to the origins of one's being. It is asserted that spiritual harmony is not achieved through magical spells, but arises from a simple act of attention. By offering the soul such a ritual, a person is, as if saying to it, "I see you, I hear you, I accept you." It is from this recognition that the process of spiritual awakening begins. Nothing flourishes in isolation and neglect, but all living things thrive when they feel safe and comfortable, even if that home is just a fleeting moment of silence between 2 breaths, 2 words between sleep and wakefulness. 7 words, repeated night after night, become invisible roots nourishing mighty trees, a personal world, clarity of mind, inner ease. All these grow from this small but sincere gesture. One day a person realizes that this simple phrase has become a way of life, as they fall asleep, not in a state of struggle, but in a state of reconnection with themselves. It is only natural to ask, how exactly will this be reflected in everyday life? The answer, although not immediately obvious, possesses immense power. This practice changes everything, starting with a person's inner world. For what is transformed in the invisible realm eventually transforms the visible reality as well. Thus, small symbolic actions lead to tangible practical changes in life. When a person begins to regularly utter a specific 7-word phrase before bed, it entails a transformation in the process of nightly rest. Sleep ceases to be a tormenting descent into oblivion after long hours of tossing and turning in bed caused by an unyielding stream of thoughts. Instead, a state of peace ensues characterized by lightness, depth, and silence. The heart rate slows, the mind calms, and the body is given the opportunity to fully relax and recover. However, the most significant impact of this practice goes beyond the physiological. Primarily, it manifests in the sensations after waking up. Days that previously began with feelings of anxiety, guilt, or depression now greet the person in a state of calm and harmony. Perhaps the first thought that arises in the morning becomes less critical and self-deprecating. Perhaps the impulsive urge to immediately get to work gives way to a deep, conscious breath. This, in turn, affects the rhythm and quality of the entire day. Decisions that were previously made in a state of tension and haste become more considered and thoughtful. Circumstances that previously threw one off balance lose their significance and sharpness. Disagreements and disputes that caused pain and resentment cease to sting so deeply. As a person's emotional state stabilizes and strengthens, thanks to the feelings of acceptance, trust, detachment from worldly concerns, and gratitude that are cultivated each night. Significant transformations also occur in the realm of interpersonal relationships. When a person is in a state of internal conflict, it is difficult for them to maintain easy communication. Unresolved internal traumas affect their behavior and reactions. However, by finding inner harmony, they begin to treat themselves with greater care and attention, which gradually reflects in their interactions with others. They become a more attentive listener, respond more calmly, and show less irritation. Even in moments of frustration, they recover their composure more quickly. This is not because they have achieved perfection, but because of the daily work of creating inner peace and harmony. This inner world cultivated within ultimately extends to everything around them. Another interesting aspect is the more frequent manifestation of creativity and intuition. When the mind is constantly under stress, there is no room to hear the voice of intuition. But when a person slows down, calms down, and connects with themselves, what seemed unclear becomes clear. They find simple solutions to old problems and feel whether something is right or wrong, even without logical justification. It is the soul regaining its ability to express itself. The most wonderful thing about this process is that no one needs to know that the person is working on themselves. It is their personal, intimate, and quiet ritual. Nevertheless, those around them will definitely notice the difference. They will note that the person has become calmer, looks peaceful, and that something about them has changed. True personal transformation is a process that defies superficial explanation, as it is born not externally, but in the depths of the human being, penetrating every cell, gradually and thoroughly. A person who has embarked on this path no longer needs empty assurances or frantic attempts to control the course of events. They realize that sometimes the greatest strength lies in the ability to stop, take a deep breath, and turn to their subconscious with simple but meaningful words. Today I choose to rest. Today I let go. Today I return to myself. If this choice becomes a regular practice, the grey days cease to be a monotonous repetition of routine duties. Each day is filled with life, awareness, and depth. Emotions gain clarity, and life stages conclude naturally and harmoniously. Problems, of course, don't disappear, but they can no longer crush a person because an unshakable point of equilibrium forms within. This anchor point arises from 7 simple words. However, the magic isn't in the words themselves, but in the sincere gesture of presence, in repeating them with soul, and in the firm intention to treat oneself with greater care and attention, especially when the mind is most vulnerable and the subconscious takes over. Caring for these moments transforms everything that follows. Changes cease to seem distant and unattainable, becoming a tangible reality manifested in the smallest details, in the gaze directed at oneself in the mirror, in the ability to cope with disappointments, and in the capacity to feel, rest, and trust. Primarily, harmony with the world doesn't arise as a result of frantic searches, but as something that originates deep within our being and remains there steadfastly. By this point, the reader has likely realized that this is about something more than just sleep or even general well-being. Essentially, this narrative is about returning home, but not to a familiar dwelling of brick and concrete, but to the most intimate place, the center of one's own self, to that part of our personality that has always been present but gradually forgotten under the weight of life's hustle, fears, and worries. Carl Jung, the eminent Swiss psychologist, called this place the self, the quintessence of the soul, the core of the psyche, and the most authentic point of our individuality. The self possesses a silent but unyielding strength. It doesn't resort to shouts, demands, or coercion. It patiently awaits the moment when a person stops betraying themselves. It waits for the hour when, tired of inner struggle, they simply decide to find peace within. And this is the meaning of the 7 key words that open the gates to this long-awaited meeting. It's not a magic spell or a miraculous technique, but a conscious choice, an inner conviction, and a symbolic gesture saying, "Today, I return to myself." It's worth considering how much time we spend searching for answers in the external world, in books, courses, advice from others, promises and fleeting solutions. Of course, all of this can provide some help, but true transformation occurs when we decide to be alone with ourselves in silence and listen to our inner voice. When we choose to hear our own soul, even if it doesn't express its thoughts in words. This meeting with oneself may seem timid at first, a deeper breath, a feeling of sudden lightness, a dream filled with vivid images, a fresh thought arising in the morning. But over time this connection strengthens, and what seemed distant and unattainable, peace of mind, clarity of thought, and a sense of purpose, gradually becomes an integral part of everyday reality. The greatest revelation lies not in acquiring something fundamentally new or brought in from the outside, but in remembering what was initially an integral part of the personality. It's not a transformation into some other person, but a return to one's true essence, buried under the weight of fears, social pressure, the burden of fatigue, and numerous life demands. Imagine that every evening, by saying the words, "I accept, I trust, I renounce, I thank, good night," a person sheds one of these layers, exposing forgotten aspects of their personality. The child with unconditional trust reappears, the mature person capable of deep feeling emerges again, and the whole being who knows how to keep silent manifests. This process, known in psychology as individuation, is a path to wholeness, not to perfection or enlightenment. It's about recognizing all of one's components, integrating the shadow sides, and building a harmonious coexistence with oneself based on love and acceptance, not on rigid demands. And the starting point of this transformation can be a simple, seemingly insignificant gesture, a nightly ritual consisting of just 7 words. Perhaps outwardly this will go unnoticed, and the person will prefer not to share this experience with others. However, internal changes will inevitably manifest in the sensations of the body, in the rhythm of breathing, and in the perception of the world. The internal dialogue will become quieter, judgment will give way to understanding, and haste will dissolve into the present moment. The world around won't change on its own, but the perception of that world will change. Inside, a certain center will appear, a point of support capable of listening, accepting, and no longer needing to shout to be heard. Existence constantly presents new tasks and tests one's strength, requiring decisions at every step. However, now everyone has the opportunity to find their inner oasis, their refuge, where they can always find comfort and support. This is a place that silently says, "It's okay, I'm here. Let's just take a breath in and out together." And that fundamentally changes the perception of the world. Encountering the authentic self is not the end of the road, but the starting point. It's the beginning of a completely new life, more harmonious, conscious, and filled with presence. It's a way of being where even in the epicenter of chaos, an island of calm is preserved which no one can take away. And this island is born thanks to the conscious choice to repeat just 7 words, thanks to the courage to stop, listen to yourself and your feelings, thanks to the firm intention to accept yourself with all your imperfections night after night, until the soul is illuminated with a smile in the silence and says, "You've returned." Not everyone realizes the transformative power these 7 simple words can hold, but those who have grasped this truth know that when the day ends in an atmosphere of acceptance, trust, and gratitude, the subconscious blossoms like a wondrous garden and the soul finds long-awaited peace. It's important to remember that true transformation begins not with loud revolutions and large-scale changes, but with small but significant choices that we make with love and care for ourselves. Good night. May everyone find their true self, may they find well-deserved rest, and may they blossom with all the colors of their soul.